In this video, we will explore why India and Russia might just be a match made in heaven. But before that, let's do a deep dive into history to better understand and contextualize the world we live in today. Since time immemorial, empires, merchants, and explorers have been obsessed with one puzzle: how to connect the East and the West, and the fastest route for doing so. So much so that in 1492, Christopher Columbus was chartered to find a shorter route to India by traveling westward instead of heading east. Instead, he stumbled upon the Americas, forever changing the course of history. Such was the impact of this one puzzle on the trajectory of history. For the next 400 years, the Cape of Good Hope route remained the most prominent sea route between Europe and Asia. This was until the Suez Canal was built in 1869 in Egypt's Sinai Peninsula, creating a shortcut between the Western and the Eastern world via the Mediterranean Sea. The earlier route of going via the Cape of Good Hope was approximately 20,000 nautical kilometers. With the advent of the Suez Canal, this route was almost halved to 11,500 kilometers. Needless to say, this had a massive impact on interconnectability between the two worlds, facilitating trade and the exchange of cultural ideas. For instance, in the first year of its operation, only some 486 ships passed the Suez Canal in the entire year. By 1956, this number had increased to a whopping 20,000 vessels per year, a sizable chunk of the global sea traffic. Fast forward to October 7, 2023, Hamas had unleashed a brutal attack on the state of Israel, prompting an equally severe retaliation, which has culminated in the ongoing war in the region. Over months, the conflict spilled over into the nearby region, with the Hezbollah-backed Houthis in Yemen becoming increasingly active. Like Hamas, the Houthis in Yemen are backed by Iran's Hezbollah, and instead of attacking Israeli interests directly, the group unleashed a barrage of attacks on vessels operating in the Red Sea. This has completely choked sea traffic coming from the Suez Canal or heading towards it from the Red Sea. For context, this is the Red Sea traffic before and after the Houthis unleashed their attacks. Insurance companies backed out of insuring vessels traveling in these waters, prompting companies and nations to completely abandon the route and return to the pre-Suez Canal route of traveling via the Cape of Good Hope, increasing both the costs and duration of the journey. 600 years after Columbus first set sail to find a shorter route between the West and the East, the same old puzzle is now back to being a burning issue. If not Suez Canal, then where? Just a month before the war broke out in Gaza, India, along with its partners in the Middle East, namely Saudi and UAE, had signaled their intention of establishing a new corridor, namely the India-Middle East-Europe Economic Corridor. Starting from ports in India, goods would be transported via maritime routes to ports in the Middle East. Key ports could include those in the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and other Gulf countries. From the Middle Eastern ports, goods would be transported overland via rail networks across the Arabian Peninsula. This includes new and existing rail infrastructure linking to ports on the Mediterranean coast. From Mediterranean ports, goods would continue by maritime routes to European ports. Key European ports could include those in Greece, Italy, and other Mediterranean countries. But then, a month later, the war broke out in Gaza, making the potential journey of vessels operating on this new route potentially dangerous, and thus rendering the project dead on arrival, at least as long as the war rages on. Since peace in the Middle East is a prerequisite to any serious consideration of the IMEC, this leaves only one practical route, at least where India is concerned: the North-South Transport Corridor, or the NSTC. The NSTC is a transportation network designed to facilitate the movement of goods between India, Russia, Iran, and other countries in Central Asia and Europe. The route would start from Indian ports in Mumbai or Gujarat, head to Iran's ports, and then travel upward to the Caspian Sea, from where it would head to Russia and Central Asia, and perhaps Europe as well. Note that while Iran is behind the disruptions that choked the Red Sea and the Suez Canal in the first place, India and Iran do enjoy a strategic partnership. This was further underlined by India reviving the Chabahar port project and agreeing to take over the project for the next 10 years. The Chabahar port will serve as the middle nodal point for this North-South corridor. From India's perspective, this hits two birds with one stone. One, it prevents Indian merchant ships from risking the war-torn passage via the Red Sea. Two, India has been locked out of a massive market in Central Asia by virtue of Gilgit-Baltistan being occupied by Pakistan. Had India control over POK, it would have had land access to Afghanistan and the markets of Central Asia beyond. The NSTC would give India this access via the Caspian Sea. In essence, India and Russia may well be forging a new Silk Route that solves a logistical puzzle that has given headaches to empires and countries for 600 years. But is this new Silk Route the only reason why India and Russia are meant to be partners? For that, we need to understand the world we are living in today. For much of the late 1900s, the world was a bipolar one. meaning it was split into two large power blocks, with the US-led NATO countries on one side and the Soviet bloc on the other. That was until late 1991 when USSR collapsed. Most of us have lived in the period following that, a unipolar world led by the United States with no rival power in sight. That ended with the sudden rise of China in the late 90s and early 2000s, with the world again looking increasingly bipolar. From India's perspective, there is US and its allies to the west, and an increasingly belligerent China to the east. Recent history has shown us that there are limitations to how much India and US can cooperate, while a bipolar world with US, China being the lead players is also not ideal for India. Enter Russia. Russia serves as a third polarity for India to hedge its bets. Many had predicted that India-Russia ties would die out after the end of the Cold War. But the two countries have proven the world wrong and continue to strengthen bilateral ties, from defense cooperation to logistics. From Russia's perspective, the country is a shadow of the superpower it used to be. Following the war in Ukraine, the country also finds itself increasingly isolated. Sanctions imposed on Russia by the West have forced it to depend more on China, something the Kremlin itself is not too comfortable with. So even from Russia's perspective, India serves as that third polarity. For both nations, the other serves as a third option to better hedge their bets and navigate the choppy waters of today's geopolitical climate. To further highlight this deepening partnership, let's take a look at the recent logistic pact signed by the two countries. India gains access to Russian facilities in the Arctic, which can be crucial for scientific research, exploration, and strategic presence in the region. Russia gains access to Indian facilities in the Indian Ocean, enhancing its operational reach and influence in this strategically important maritime region. For Russia, this solves a centuries-old problem that its rulers have faced: a lack of warm water ports. Being a subarctic country, most of Russia's seaports lie in cold regions, frozen almost half the year. Some even argue that the need for warm water ports was what prompted Russia to gamble with the war in Ukraine in order to secure the warm water ports of Crimea, which gives them direct access to the Black Sea and the Mediterranean Sea beyond. From charting a new Silk route that defies today's climate of war to finding a partner that they can both lean on, India-Russia ties are indeed written in the stars.